Good morning. Let's begin our session. So let's continue with the Kubernetes objects. Hope we were understanding, like hope you understood, we were discussing about the Kubernetes objects. Let's understand more on Kubernetes objects. So let's go in a particular order. So let's understand first how to create a pod, what is a pod and how to create a pod. What is replication controller in Kubernetes? So these are the objects, okay? We are trying to understand each and every object very clearly. So first we will talk about the pod. What is pod? How can we create a pod in Kubernetes with the help of YAML file and the replication controller? We also have objects like replica set. So both replication controller and replica set will be mostly similar, and there are some differences. We will understand like what is the differences, what are the differences between replication controller and replication set. After that, we'll be understanding deployment object. We'll be understanding the deployment objects. Let's understand these objects first, and then we will move to the other objects like ingress service, all those objects. Let's understand these things. Let's go ahead and see how can we create a pod. So for practicing the Kubernetes, like what I did is like I have installed Docker Desktop. I told you like how to install Docker Desktop. We in the earlier sessions, like we had a discussion like how to install Docker Desktop. We can see we can go to the Google and search like Docker Desktop download, and here we can able to see we will select Docker Desktop, and you can click on Docker Desktop here, Windows Docker Desktop Windows version, so that the file will be downloaded. The file will be downloaded. Docker Desktop installer exe file will be downloaded. You can simply double click on it and you can install it. Once you install it, you will see here. Usually on the desktop, an icon, you can see an icon on the desktop. So this is how you can see an icon on the desktop. Okay. I'm just opening the Docker Desktop icon. So I have already installed. You can try installing Docker Desktop. That's a very simple process. Like you go ahead and download the exe file. Once you download the exe file, just double click on it so that the Docker Desktop will be installed in your machine. So once the Docker Desktop is installed, you can try opening that one. And I can see the status of the Docker Desktop, my Docker Desktop here. The status of your Docker Desktop will be shown here. And you see here, my Docker Desktop is running. Okay. So I am just trying to open this one. Let's wait. Yeah, Docker Desktop is running and Kubernetes is running. So we just need to open it and we need to interact with it. Second, I'm trying to open this Docker Desktop. Okay. So usually the Docker Desktop is already running. What I did is I've gone here. So since it is showing the status of Docker Desktop, I just double click on the icon so that I can able to see the Docker Desktop is open. So this is how you need to open the Docker Desktop. Once you install Docker Desktop, you can see the page like this. Okay, you can see the page like you can see containers, images, volumes. Okay, all these things. This is how the page looks like. And if you want to enable Kubernetes, usually the Kubernetes is by default disabled in the Docker Desktop. So to enable Kubernetes, please go to the settings here, settings option. The settings, like we have Kubernetes, just click on Kubernetes. By default, actually, it will be in the disabled state. You can click on enable and you can apply and restart. You can just click on apply and restart. Here on the bottom, we have after cancel. So the next to the cancel, we have apply and restart button. Just apply and restart it. That's it. This is the only thing we need to enable so that we will get a one node cluster. Usually a one node cluster will be ready for us to practice. So once everything is ready, we can connect to the Kubernetes and we can practice. We can practice like how we are going to run the Kubernetes commands. So this is just a thing like, so we have various ways to practice Kubernetes. Like you can go ahead and create a cluster in the cloud. Okay, you can go ahead and create a cluster in the AWS cloud. You can, and that's a process like, so maybe it is not allowing the free trial. Okay. Why I'm showing here is it is not allowing to create, it is not allowing to set up the Kubernetes there with for the free tier account. Okay. So that's the reason why I'm just trying to explain you with the help of Docker desktop. And this Docker desktop will provide you a single node cluster. Okay. So I'm just trying to open it. I'm just opening the Docker desktop. Usually, once the Docker desktop is up and running, you can see the icon like this. Docker desktop is running. You can just open, double click on it. That's it. So you can able to open the Docker desktop, go to the settings and find out the Kubernetes option, and you can enable the Kubernetes, apply and restart. That's it. Once you enable the Kubernetes, you can connect to the terminal. You can connect to the terminal. You see, I'm having a terminal here within the Docker desktop itself. Bottom, you can see the terminal within the Docker desktop. Okay, there is a terminal within the Docker desktop. Just click on the terminal and we will be connecting to the terminal. We got connected to the terminal. See, yes. So now I'm just trying to run a command. Okay, I'm just trying to run a command. So for example, I'm just trying to run a command to show you like how actually it works. So I am just trying to run a command like kubectl get pods. So what it is showing is there are no resources found in the default namespace. The cluster is there. Okay, for me, it is providing a single node cluster. If you want to see the cluster also, let me show you. Closing this. You want to see the cluster. Okay, you can see here. So by enabling the Kubernetes, okay, internally it is providing a single node cluster. Can you see here? If you enable the Kubernetes option, it will start a single node cluster. Okay. When you start the Docker desktop, it will provide you the single node cluster. So anyhow, we will practice first. Okay, we'll practice first. Then you will understand like how actually the cluster will be and all those things. So by default, like Docker desktop is providing a single node cluster. We are just connecting to the single node cluster. And here we are practicing like we are using some commands. I'm just trying to use a command. You know, the command we use. Okay, this is the command we use to see the list of pods. If I run a kubectl, if I run kubectl get pods command, so usually I can see what are all the pods that are available. Okay. So we don't have any pods for now. We don't have any pods for now. That's the reason why we could not able to create any pod. So usually I told you if we actually wanted to create a pod, definitely we will write an YAML file and we will be with the help of YAML file, we are going to create a pod. So let me show you like how we are going to create a pod with the help of YAML file. Otherwise, with the help of commands also we can do it. With the help of commands also we can do it. Let me run with the help of commands first. So how to create a command? How to create a pod with the help of command? Okay, we'll go to the YAML file later. So usually after connecting to the Kubernetes cluster, we can run a command like this. Just I'm trying to run a command like this. Try to understand the meaning of this command. kubectl. I'm just running a command called kubectl run. kubectl run. The image name we are using, you see the image name we are using is hyphen image Tomcat. I'm just removing this. kubectl. I'm running a command called kubectl run hyphen image. Consider I would like to run an image called Tomcat. Okay, I would like to run an image called Tomcat. Otherwise, I would like to run an image called Jenkins, whatever it is. Okay. I would like to run an image called Tomcat. So what I'm giving, the command is kubectl run hyphen image Tomcat. And at the end, you can see here, we need to provide the name of the pod. We need to provide the name of the pod. This is the name of the pod. So kubectl run. Okay. I'm giving the name of the pod as web server. So for running to create a pod, actually what we require is Docker image. I told you the important thing that we need, the prerequisite to create pods and all, how the pods are being created. Without image, without Docker image, we cannot create a pod. So first of all, what is required is we need a Docker image. So from where it is pulling, we are not mentioning any, we don't have any internal repositories for now. So if I'm giving like the image Tomcat, it will definitely pull the image from public registry. I have shown you the public registry, right? Docker public registry. From there, the Docker image will be pulled. From there, the Tomcat image will be pulled and a pod will be created. What is the name of the pod? The name of the pod is web server. Here, the name of the pod is web server. So web server pod will be created. Let's see by running this command. Try to understand before we run the command. We are going to create a pod with the help of commands. We are going to create a pod with the help of kubectl commands. And we know all the Kubernetes commands will start with kubectl. All the Docker commands will start with the Docker images, Docker containers, Docker pull, Docker push. Okay, everything will be like that. But here in the Kubernetes, if you see, all the commands will start with kubectl. In Kubernetes, everything will start with kubectl. Kubectl run hyphen image Tomcat. This is the image name. It will pull the image from the web server. It will pull the image from the public registry, Docker public registry. Okay. And the name of the pod, name of the pod is web server. Okay. I'm just running this command. You see what is the output that we got. After running this, you can see what is the output that we got. We got an output called web pod or web server is created. Pod is created. To see the list of pods, once a pod is created, to understand whether the pod is created or not, you can run a command. Usually, to see the Docker images, we use like Docker images command, right? In the same way. So to see the list of pods, you can run a command called kubectl get pods so that you can able to see what are all the pods running here. Yes, pod is running. Can you see? Web server pod is running and you can see the status here. One pod is running. There are no restarts. Restarts are 0. When did this pod was created? The status of the pod is running. And when did the pod is created? 28 seconds ago. Now again, if you run the same command, it will show you the details, more details. Pod is running. Pod is running. Age is 50 seconds. Restarts are 0. This is how actually it shows. Okay. I'm clearing the screen. So now you understood like how to create a pod with the help of command. We understood like how to create a pod with the help of command. We need to run a command like kubectl run pod name image name, kubectl run image name pod name. This is how we will create a pod with the help of commands. At the same time, suppose if I don't want the pod, okay, I want to delete the pod. Usually we know to see the list of pods, we just ran a command called kubectl get pods, okay, that we understood. To see the list of pods, this is the command I'm running. Kubectl get pods is the command I'm running. Okay. So if I am creating a pod, usually how many replicas it will create? It will create only one replica. If you are creating a pod, try to understand, it will create only one pod. One replica means only one pod. If you want to increase the number of replicas, we don't have that feature in the pod YAML. If you're writing an YAML file, okay? If you're writing an YAML file for pod, we don't have that specific feature to increase the number of replicas in the pod YAML file, okay? Those things you'll understand later. But for now, we are running the Kubernetes commands, kubectl get pods, kubectl. And if I want to show you, there is one more command you can run to see the cluster details, meaning how many nodes are there and all. In the same way, how you are running kubectl get pods, you can also run a command called kubectl get nodes. You see here, in the same way, how we are running kubectl get pods, how we are running kubectl get pods. In the same way, we can run kubectl get nodes command. It is clearly showing, okay, this is where you are practicing. This is your cluster, Docker desktop. And here the role is control plane. We have only one node. So the same node is acting as master and the same node is acting as the same thing as acting as node. Okay, we have only one thing. We are practicing in Docker desktop. That's why it is showing. Suppose if it is not the Docker desktop, it will show you the cluster details, how many nodes are available and all. Okay. So usually I told you like you can also use a command like kubectl get pods -o wide output. Okay. So to see the pods with more details. Usually kubectl get pods will give you the pod details. Or it will show you, it will display you the pod information. If you need more information about the pod, you can run a command like kubectl get pods -o wide. I'm just running a command like kubectl get pods -o wide. You can see the more details about the pod, like the pod is running, the status of the pod is ready, restarts, age, along with these details. It will also show in which node the pod is running. The pod is running in this node. Web server is the pod name. Web server is the pod name, and that web server pod is running in this particular IP address. This is the IP address of the machine. This is the IP address of the machine where my pod is running 10.1.0.11. This is the place where my pod is running. Okay. And the name of the node is Docker desktop. The name of the node is Docker desktop. This is how actually it shows the more details about the pods. When you run kubectl get pods -o wide, this is nothing but a wide output. If you, to see the wide output, you can run a command like this. And we will also run a command like kubectl get nodes -o wide output. It will provide you the more detailed information about the nodes. You can see here the name is Docker desktop. Okay, name of the container. Okay, name of the container is name. See the cluster. Okay, it is showing the name of the cluster. The cluster is, we had the cluster of Docker desktop. Cluster and node both are same here. They are providing only single node cluster. And you can see all the internal IP address. What is the internal IP address of the machine? It won't display the external IP. What is the OS image, kernel version, all these things. Okay, when did this one created? Okay, when did this Docker desktop created, installed, all these things it will show. The more details you can see by running a command called kubectl get nodes -o wide. This is how we can able to see much information about the pods and about the nodes. And let's see how we are going to create a pod with the help of YAML. Suppose we have seen like how to create a pod with the help of command. Okay, we understood, right? So what is the command you need to run? With the help of commands, if you want to create a pod channel, kubectl run -- image. You need to mention the image. You need to mention the image, imag image, and you need to have the image. You need to have the Docker image. Consider this is my image, which is going to be pulled from the public registry, Docker public registry. And I would like to provide the name of the pod as Jenkins pod. Okay, I'm just giving the name of the pod as Jenkins pod. You see here pod is created. Jenkins pod is created. Earlier we had one more pod is running. To see how many pods running now, we can run a command called kubectl get pods. You can see now already web server is running, and we created one more pod called Jenkins pod. And you see the status of the Jenkins pod, it is still showing like 0/1, meaning still the pod is not up. And you also see the status of this container, container is creating. Maybe after some time you can check. Even after some time, if it is showing the same status, it means there is no space to run the Jenkins pod. If it is still showing the container creating, and if the container is not getting created, you need to understand that there is no sufficient space for running pods and all. Okay, so now we understood, like I created one more pod here, which is called Jenkins pod. Web server is already running. Jenkins pod is also running now. I don't want all these two pods. I want to delete these two pods. How to delete? How to delete these two pods? We have a command to delete the pods. kubectl delete pod name. kubectl delete pod name. You can run a command called kubectl delete pod name. I am running a command called kubectl delete pod name. So one pod name is web server. The other pod name is, so first we'll delete one. Okay, kubectl delete pod. Kubectl delete pod web server. So web server pod is deleted. Clearing the screen. You can see the clear status here. It's showing like web server pod is deleted. I'm clearing the screen, and going again to see the list of pods. I'm running kubectl get pods once again. When I'm running the kubectl get pods, it is showing like Jenkins pod. Only the Jenkins pod is running, not others. Okay, only the Jenkins pod is running. And if I want to delete even this one, you can run a command called kubectl delete pod. The name of the pod is Jenkins pod. You can delete the Jenkins pod by running the command kubectl delete pod name. Kubectl delete pod name, so that the pod will also be deleted. Yes, pod is deleted. And you can run a command now, kubectl get pods. We don't have any. If there are no resources, there are no pods running, it will show you the status like no resources found in the default namespace. If it is showing like no resources found in the default namespace, it will, okay, usually this is the status, shows no pods are running. Fine. We understood like how to create pods, how to delete pods with the help of commands. Let's understand. I have shown you the YAML file. You have a Kubernetes, you have a documentation. You can go to the official website of Kubernetes. We have a documentation here, and how to search for the documentation, Kubernetes documentation. The Google directly, you can go and search for the Kubernetes documentation. Just open the Kubernetes documentation. And suppose if you are going to create a pod, if you want to create a pod, just search with the pod. So pod, you can read out the information, much information about the pod. What is the pod? Pod is the smallest object in the Kubernetes. I told you the pod is the very smallest object that will be created in the Kubernetes. There are other group of objects. There are other objects, but when compared to the other objects, pod is the smallest object that we create in the Kubernetes. Let's understand about the YAML file of the pod. This is the YAML file. As we already came across the importance of the YAML file here. So what are the contents that will be present in the YAML file? So there will be 4 top level elements present in the YAML file. One is API version, kind, metadata, specification. So API version will give you, API version specifies the library. Okay, at the API version, we need to specify the name of the library that we need to attach. So for pod, the library that we are attaching is v1. For different objects, there will be some different libraries. For few objects, it will be like app/v1. Some different libraries will be there. We need to attach those libraries. It is nothing but attaching this program. Okay, inside v1 version, there is a piece of code which we are attaching to the API version. Okay, this is nothing but we are attaching some code to this particular YAML file. Okay, which is required. So it is like nothing but attaching a header file. If you remember, we will attach some header files like hash include stdio.h, conio.h in the same way. So why we are attaching that particular header files to the program? Because we don't want to write the entire code, and we just wanted to mention everything in .sh, stdio.h file, conio.h file. Like that, we'll keep something. Okay, we will write the code in .sh file, and we are attaching the .sh file over there. Similarly, here we are attaching the v1 version. We are not writing the entire code here. We are just attaching the v1 version of this one, v1 version. So this particular v1 is having some code. We are attaching that to this pod file. Okay, YAML file. Finally, like you understood, like API version, we need to provide kind. Kind is nothing but the name of the object that you are creating. It is not the name of the object, the type of the object you are creating. So if you are creating a pod, you will see like you will see here like pod. If you are creating a replica set, you will see replica set here. If you create deployment object, you will see the deployment here. You need to provide deployment as name here. So kind is nothing but the type of the object you are creating. Metadata is nothing but the more details about the pod you are creating. So for now, here in this particular file, we have only name. Name is nothing but like we are providing the name of the pod as Nginx pod. We are providing the name of the pod as Nginx pod. And the important section, this is the important section where you need to understand. Under the specification section, you see we have the containers. We are going to provide the container information under the specification section. Under the specification section, you need to provide the container information. What is the container information here? You can understand. Under containers, we have the name, image, ports, all these things. This is important, name of the image. The name of the image. If you want to provide the version of the image, you need to provide like this, Nginx : the version of the image. Suppose if we do not provide any image, if we do not provide any version number, it will pick up the latest version. If I'm just giving the name of the image as Nginx without mentioning any version, it will pick the image. It will pick the image latest version image. So under specification section, we are providing the container information. Name of the container, the image is name of the image is this one, Nginx 1.14.2. Name of the container is Nginx. Once the container is created, we are giving some name to the container. Once the container is created, with the help of this Docker image, container will be created. Once you run the pod, usually once you run this YAML file, pod will be created, right? Once you run this YAML file, pod will be created. Once a pod is created, what is the name of the pod? Name of the pod is Nginx. Name of the name of the container is also Nginx. Within the pod, usually I told you, container will run. The type of the object we are creating is pod. If someone asks you like what will be running inside the pod, it will be like Docker container only. Inside the pod, we'll be having a Docker container. So what is the name of the container? Nginx is the name of the container. Okay. And we are giving some ports. We are specifying the ports like this. Container port as 80. The default port number of Nginx is 80. We are just giving the port number as 80. Okay. So this is the YAML file. I'm copying this YAML file and you need to go to the Docker desktop. Here we will create a file like I'm using a VI editor. Okay. VI pod.yaml. I'm just writing like this. So maybe we cannot vi space pod.yaml. Okay. So it's saying that we cannot, the term VI is not recognized as an object. So we are not able to use the VI editor here. So first we need to save the file. First of all, we need to save the file. So let's try to close this and let's try to connect. Okay. So here we are directly connecting to this Docker desktop. We are directly connecting to this Docker desktop with the help of the terminal. So usually we have a command. We can connect to the Docker desktop from our local machine terminal. Okay. So this is the terminal which is already there inside the Docker desktop. So here it is not allowing me when I'm writing like vi pod.yaml. If I'm going to save any kind of file like this, it is not allowing me to uh, create a file. So that's the reason why. Second, vi will not do. So what I will do is like I'll close this terminal. I will ask the Google like the commands to connect to the cluster. Okay. So I'm just asking Google like how to connect to the cluster, how to connect to Docker desktop, how to connect to the Docker desktop from local terminal. So I'm just asking this one, you see, this is showing something. Okay, here I'm going to some other option called command prompt. Let's see here. Kubectl get reports. showing like this or not. Okay. VI space pod dot YAML. VI is not recognized. I'm trying to git bash kubectl get pod VI space pod dot YAML. Okay. It's working. Okay. I'm just trying to take the git bash. So git bash is working. So what I'm doing is I'm going to save I'm using insert option. And whatever the YAML file that we have here, right, in the Kubernetes documentation, you understood like Kubernetes, in the Kubernetes documentation, we have the pod.yaml file. I am copying this. Okay. I'm copying this and I am going to uh, paste it the same YAML file, whatever the YAML file I'm copying, and I'm pasting the same YAML file over here. So you don't need to worry about learning each and everything particularly. So we have a documentation. So we'll be having a YAML file format for each and every object. The only things, only few things you might need to change, and you need to have an idea, like what are the changes that we need to do while creating a deployment or while creating a pod, all these things. So I just copied the YAML file here. I've just copied the YAML file and I need to save the file. To save the file, I use escape button, shift colon W. You know how to use VI editor, right? We have already mentioned clearly while learning the Linux commands. I just opened in the VI editor and I'm saving the file. Okay. So now I use ls command to see. Okay. ls command to see whether my file is there. Pod.yaml. I think yes, pod.yaml is here. You can see pod.yaml is there. So now how to create. So we will run a command. I'm clearing the screen. So once you see the list of files, you have a list of files. Pod.yaml is available here. And once you save the file, you can run a command like kubectl. Okay, the command which is used to create pod is kubectl create -f pod.yaml. The name which you, okay, the name of the YAML file. kubectl create -f pod.yaml. This is the name of the YAML file which we saved the YAML file. Okay. And you see here when I'm running this command kubectl create -f pod.yaml. This is the command we use for creating a pod or for creating a deployment by using the YAML file, anything. So you need to write this, okay, kubectl create -f pod.yaml so that the pod will be created and the next pod is created. If you want to see, you can see by running kubectl get pods. Yes, I'm running kubectl get pods. Pods are running. Pod is running. So we know how to create a pod with the help of YAML file. Now let's understand. Suppose if I want to create, okay, this is the pod. What is the advantage of having pod? So only one replica will be created. We cannot create more replicas. What is the smallest object? If I want to increase the number of replicas, I cannot do it with the help of pod YAML. So pod YAML is not at all. Pod YAML file is not suitable for increasing the number of replicas. If you see, I'm just going to open the pod YAML file here, and you see here, I don't here in this YAML file. I'm just trying to show you by using a cat command. So this is the content that I have provided, and nowhere we did not specify the replicas. We didn't specify the number of replicas. Suppose if you want more replicas, if you don't want a single pod, if you want more replicas, the type this object, okay, the type of the object pod we cannot use this pod type object for increasing the number of replicas. So what is the solution? We will go to the replica set. We will go to the another object called replication controller. Let me go to the replication controller. We have an object called replication controller, and we'll try to understand the differences between pod and replication controller. So usually we won't create pod in the real time. We'll directly create the deployments. So why we directly create the deployment, we need to understand. So now we are trying to understand one by one object, one after one another. Okay. We understood what is a pod. We know we have seen the YAML file of the pod. So what is the advantage? What is the drawback here? Only single pod. We can create only single pod. If I want to increase the number of replicas, I cannot do it. Only single pod can be created. I cannot do it much. If I want more replicas, if my traffic is increasing, if I want more replicas, I cannot create with the help of pod object. Fine, let me go to the next one, which is called replication controller. Okay. So with the help of replication controller, we can create multiple replicas. You see, this is the object. What is the kind of the object? API version for replication controller is also V1. The API version for replication controller is also v1. And the kind of the object is replication controller. And here you can see there is a section called specification. The specification section we are already aware of it. This specification section we are already aware of it. This the second specification section. Here this replication controller AML will have two specification sections. One specification section is for container information. So we can observe the replication controller AML. So there are two specification sections. One is the specification section which is for providing the container information. There is another specification section which is to provide the replicas information. We can see here there is another specification section which we are mentioning here. This is called replica. This is where we are mentioning the number of replicas. Replicas 3. And along with the replicas, we also have one more field called selector. Selector app name is Nginx. So we are giving like, so it will try to pull, okay, it will try to pull. Suppose if we are creating 3 replicas, okay, if I'm creating 3 replicas, what is the name of the replication controller? You can see API version is v1, kind is replication controller. Under metadata, we are clearly mentioning the name of the replication controller is Nginx. This is about this particular thing. The name of the replication controller is Nginx replication controller. And how many replicas we want, we need to mention under the specification section. Okay. And this is the metadata. This is metadata for the replicas. This is the metadata for replication controller. Try to understand. This is the metadata section for replication controller. And this metadata section is for the pods we are creating. So what is the name of the pod we are creating? The name of the pod is Nginx. The name of the replication controller is also Nginx. The name of the pod is also Nginx. How many pods we are creating? 3 pods. Okay. The name of the pod is Nginx. The name of the replication controller is also Nginx. So this is the metadata section, which is for the replicas, and this is the metadata section for replication controller. And if you look at this metadata section, which is provided for the replicas, under replicas, okay, specification, replicas, and again we have a template. Under template, we have metadata, name of the pod, okay, name of the pod, more information about these things, okay. You can see here, this the only difference, okay, if you are not understanding all these things, we will understand slowly all these things, but the only thing you need to understand is like in the pod YAML file, we don't see this replicas information. In the pod YAML file, we don't see the replicas information. How many replicas here? We have only, we are specifying that we need 3 replicas. Let's understand, let's go ahead and create, whether we can create 3 replicas or not, okay. Let me copy this YAML file. So what is the container information? We already understood the container information. Name of the image is Nginx. Name of the container is also Nginx. The port we are enabling is 80. This is how the providing information we are providing. We are clear about the specification section. We are providing the container related information here. And we are clear about the API version. API version for replication control is v1. This is fixed actually. Okay, how we are getting this information? We have a documentation and we can see the API version for replication control is v1. The type of the object we are creating is replication controller. And the metadata. The name of the replication controller we are creating is Nginx. Metadata, under metadata, we are giving the name of the replication controller. Name of the replication controller is Nginx. We are clear about this information. We are also clear this specification section, one more specification section that is added. And here we are having the replicas information. How many replicas we require? If I want 2 replicas, I will give the replicas number as 2. If I want 3 replicas, I will give the number of replicas as 3. That's how we need to provide. And we have some additional information here. Selector, app, Okay, so we have a field called selector, we have a field called template. Okay, all these things we will understand, but try to understand the difference. In pod ML, we don't have this replicas information. We don't have the specification section. In pod, we don't have the specification section. In replication controller, we have the specification section. This specification section is mainly for creating the replicas. This specification section is mainly for creating replicas. If you don't understand what is selector, template, all these things, you will understand slowly. This specification section is mainly for creating the replicas. Let's try. Let's go ahead and create. I'm copying this YAML file. I'm going to the Docker desktop. Let me clear the screen here. So what I'm doing is, I would need to create one more YAML file. I'm creating an YAML file called vi space replication controller.yaml. I'm going to create one more YAML file with the name replication controller.yaml. So now what I'm doing, I'm saving the entire file here. Insert button, save the entire YAML file. This is how we are saving. Okay. You can see API version, kind, metadata, replicas. Okay, everything we are providing as it is. Escape, shift color, WQ. We are saving the file. And if I would like to run, before I run, I will delete the previous one. I'll delete the previous one. Okay. So why? Because why I'm deleting is there is no space actually, will not be space. We are going to create multiple replicas with the help of replication controller. Let me delete the one. So if you see here, I'm going to delete. What is the command I told you? kubectl delete. If you want to delete a pod, you need to delete a pod with the help of kubectl delete. Pod and the name of the pod. What is the name of the pod? If you want to know the name of the pod, you can run a command like kubectl get pods. Sorry, kubectl get pods is the name of the pod. So nginx is the name of the pod. You can see nginx is the name of the pod. So if you want to delete kubectl delete kubectl kubectl delete pod name is nginx. You see, it is showing like the status, it is showing like pod is deleted, but the pod will not be deleted. The status it is showing like pod is deleted. Okay. Usually the pod should be deleted, right? But whenever I run a command kubectl get pods, after some time, usually, okay. So, okay, anyhow, this is the pod YAML. It won't create one more pod, but usually if you are creating any object with the help of YAML file, you should delete the YAML file. You should delete the YAML file. That YAML file is called definition file or manifest file. Whatever the file that we are creating, the name of the file is called as definition file or YAML file. Always remember, if you are deleting any object which is created through YAML file, you need to delete that manifest file. You need to delete that manifest file. So how to delete the manifest file? kubectl delete -f pod.yaml. I'm going to delete the YAML file. Kubectl. We have an YAML file, right? So this is the one. kubectl delete. We can delete the YAML file by running a command. Let me show you. This is the command, okay? So to delete the pod created from the file, you need to delete, okay? You need to delete. So we can now, anyhow, we deleted the pod. That's why we can remove the YAML file for now. So if you don't understand, like what I'm trying to say is, if you are creating any objects with the help of YAML file, try to delete the YAML file with the help of this command, kubectl delete -f. Try to remove the YAML file. Okay, if you don't remove the YAML file, what happens? That will also that also you need to understand. You will understand slowly now. I'm clearing the screen. For now, I have deleted the pod. I don't have any pods now. I don't have any pods now. Now I'm going to create kubectl, create replication controller, kubectl, create -f. What is the name of the replication controller? Replication controller.yaml. I'm just running this. Yes, replication controller is created. How many pods we mentioned? You remember 3 pods. We asked to create 3 pods in the replication controller. In the YAML file, we just mentioned we need the 3 replicas. Okay, in the YAML file, we just mentioned like we need 3 replicas. Anyhow, 3 replicas are getting created. To see the pods, yes. You can see all the 3 pods are up and running now. All the 3 pods are up and running. We asked to create 3 replicas and all the 3 pods are up and running. One thing I would like to be very clear here. Suppose here, this is the name of the pod. Okay, this is the name of the This is the name of one pod, and this is the name of another pod. This is the name of the third pod. So usually I'm going to delete one pod, kubectl. If I want to delete any of the pod, kubectl, delete pod, pod name. I'm using the pod name. Kubectl, delete pod, pod name I'm using. Even though if I run this command, you see, pod is deleted. Kubectl, delete pod, pod name. You see, each and every pod is having a pod name. This is the name of the pod. This is name of another pod. This is name of another pod. I am deleting a pod with the help of this command. Kubectl delete pod. Kubectl delete pod. Name of the pod. Pod is deleted. Fine. Pod is deleted. But one thing you need to understand. Pod is deleted. When I am trying to run kubectl get pods command, again all the three pods are showing displaying. Do you know the reason why it is displaying? You see, the first two pods they were started and they were running since 85 seconds, and the latest one, and you see one more pod which is created just now, 23 seconds. And whenever you run a command called kubectl delete pod, the pod will be deleted, but again immediately the file will immediately again a new pod will be created. Okay, again immediately a new file, a new pod will be created, because we are creating a manifest file, we are having a manifest file. And whenever I am explaining the Kubernetes architecture, I told you there is a component called controller manager. There is a component called controller manager. The advantage of controller manager, you see, if you understand the advantage of controller manager is, even though if you delete any particular pod, the controller manager will always verify whether all the replicas are present based on the manifest file or not. So what is manifest file? The file you are giving. Whatever the file you are giving, I am giving a file called application controller.aml. I am giving a file called application controller.aml. This is the file. In the manifest file, I specified that I need 3 replicas. But when controller manager verifies that there were 2 replicas, why? Because I have deleted a pod, right? Earlier, just now I deleted a pod. And when I deleted the pod, I just see only 2 replicas. Controller manager verified that there are 2 replicas. So what controller manager will do? Controller manager will always make sure whether it is having the number of replicas based on the YAML file here. Okay, so whatever the number that is specified here, it is having the number of replicas or not. Controller manager will always make sure whether it has the replicas as per the YAML file, as per the definition file or not. If the number of pods are not present as per the YAML file, it will create, definitely, it will create one more. So it will always make sure the number of pods running up and running based on the YAML file you are giving. Okay, so that's what you need to understand. That's the reason why even if you delete all the pods also, okay, if I'm going to kubectl get pods, I'm running this one. These 3 pods are running. Okay, now I am going to delete this pod. This pod will be deleted. A new pod will come in the place of this particular pod. So when I'm running kubectl delete pod, kubectl delete pod, and if I delete this particular pod, okay, I want to copy it. And if I'm giving, okay, I'm just deleting the pod is deleted. Pod L2PTQ, the name pod L2PTQ is deleted. The pod will not be there with the same name. A new pod will come into the picture. A new pod will be created. Just now a new pod is created. H5 Z29 new pod is created. How we know the new pod is created? You see the age. These 2 pods were created earlier, okay, long back, some 4 minutes, 3 minutes back. Now, recently, 9 seconds back, a pod is created. Meaning the pod which we tried to delete, that got deleted, and a new pod is created in the place of old pod. The task of controller manager is to create the pods, to create the new pods in the place of deleted pods. If any pod is deleted, okay, if any pod is deleted, new pod will be created with the help of new pod will be created by the controller manager. So controller manager is the component which will always make sure whether the number of pods are running based on the request, based on the as per the requested by the user or not. That's how. Okay. So I hope you understood like how to create pod, how to create a replication controller. So now the difference between a pod and replication controller is, in the pod we cannot specify the number of replicas. We cannot create more replicas. In the replication controller we can create more replicas. In the replication controller, we can create more replicas. And we also have some other objects. We need to understand some more objects as replica set and deployment object. We will be continuing in the next session, and we will also understand the YAML file in detail about the replication controller YAML in detail about the replication controller YAML in detail in the next session. Okay, we'll discuss about replica set, deployment, ingress, all these objects are there. We will discuss in the further discussions. Okay, I'm closing this for now.